Jesus, at the mention of your name, every knee shall bow and tongue proclaim. Jesus, Jesus, you are Savior, you are Lord, and you are God. Yes, you are.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Pastor John, are we on?
Good to go. Good morning, Supervisor.
Good morning. Good morning, 6 Episcopal Districts. And welcome to our Constitution and Bylaws training. This is an important moment for our 6 Episcopal District, our WMS, and our YPD. This training is being provided by my friend and colleague, Harriet Brown Burke. And we will hear from Mrs. Burke shortly. But first and foremost, I want to have us open in prayer. I want to thank my colleagues, Dr. Dolly Adams and DeSelle Adams and Supervisor Dorothy Young for joining us today. And if you would, Pastor Young, if you can highlight Dr. Young and Dr. Dolly so that they can be seen by those gathered. And if they would like to bring a word of greeting.
Father Young, unmute yourself.
Thank you to our supervisor, Christy Davis Jackson Esquire. I am delighted to be on this call, and to all my missionary sisters on every level. Harriet Brown Burke Esquire was my president when I was the supervisor of the 11th Episcopal District, and I worked with her. She is phenomenal. She knows all about that Constitution and bylaws, and I know we will learn a lot today. And I'm just grateful to be on. And sorry you had to see me put my earrings on.
We love you. We love you. We love you. And if you would, Supervisor Young, if you want to add comments in the chat or just direct Pastor Young that you'd like to say a thing or two during the presentation, please don't hesitate to do so. We could all learn from your years of experience going to a million quadrennials. So we'll all need that.
Okay.
So thank you so much for joining us this morning. Can we highlight Dr. Dolly, Pastor John?
She hasn't joined yet, Supervisor. When she joins, I'll highlight her and send you a text message.
Terrific, terrific. If we can, please, is Sister Pat Phillips online?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Sister Pat. So that we are in order, would you please open us up in prayer for this gathering?
Okay, let us pray. Father, we praise you, we honor you, and we magnify your holy name. Lord, we thank you for every seat that has been filled here today, for each mind and heart that feels the presence of this Zoom. We thank you, Lord. Only you truly know what we are setting out to accomplish today. We have an idea, we have a vision, we have hints, and we have daily instructions. We have talents, abilities, and time to work. However, Lord, only you can see in perfect detail the end of every beginning, every project, every season, and every life. Nothing is ever in vain, for even mistakes and missteps are used for our good. So we just want to thank you right now and praise your name. In your holy name, we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for that, Sister Pat of the Macon Conference, for joining us in that wonderful prayer. If we can, Pastor John, highlight our esteemed, wonderful efficient, in order. 6th Episcopal District WMS President, Dr. Sylvia Moore, for her greetings.
Good morning, 6th Episcopal District. Thank you, Supervisor, for that. Good morning, everyone. We're elated to have you join us this morning. A few highlights that we want to share before we begin. We will be using the chat box for questions at the end. So if you have any questions or need any clarity on something, please put it in the chat box. YPD Director Joyce Stinson will be checking our chat box and letting us know what questions we have at the end. I am so happy to see so many of you this morning. I think this is a great opportunity for us to learn more and understand more. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Supervisor. I return my time.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Moore, for that. And if we could highlight our YPD President for greetings.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, President Joyce Stinson. As usual, with that beautiful smile, would you bring greetings to everyone?
Yes, I am so delighted to be on, and I want to thank Supervisor Jackson and Dr. Moore for allowing the YPD to join you all on this training. We are really excited as we are gearing up for quadrennial in July. We want to make sure that all of our YPDers, our delegates, alternates, and observers are in decency and in order. So we're so excited to be on this call to learn. I had the privilege of learning from Sister Harriet at the Connectional LTI back in April, I believe, and it was very good to hear all the things that she taught us, and I'm excited for what she's going to bring to us today. So with that, I yield my time back to Supervisor.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And again, Joy is going to be the President is going to be the administrator for our session today. If you have individual questions, please direct them to President Joy Stinson in the chat or to her directly. She will pick them up at the appropriate time. And at this time, would you please unmute our YPD Director for the 6th Episcopal District, Lorelei Johnson, for remarks, and welcome.
Great morning, family. To Supervisor Jackson, Supervisor Young, President Moore, and President Stinson, all the women's missionaries and YPDs gathered together. As Joy said, we were preparing for quadrennial, and we wanted to make sure that the YPD delegation knew about the legislation piece of the quadrennial. So we're excited about this workshop and can't wait to hear all the wonderful things that we will learn today. So YPD, I just ask that you be active participants, turn your cameras on, take lots of notes, and put your questions in the chat box. We look forward to a great presentation. So have a great workshop of legislation learning.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Director Johnson. We are pleased to do this presentation, this training combined, because we will be combined as we gather in the 11th Episcopal District for the quadrennial in Orlando. And at this time, I would like to introduce the woman of the hour who will present the Constitution and bylaws of the WMS Connectional Church. Her name should be well known to us. She has many friends in the 6th Episcopal District, Harriet Brown Burke. She was appointed Connectional Chair of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee in 2020, but served in that capacity when I met her, serving alongside Rita Beelan from 2016. She'll correct us or correct me when she comes into view. And that's when I first met Harriet Brown Burke. Harriet has served as chair of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee in the local, conference, and Episcopal level. So she is well versed and is a subject matter expert in Constitution and bylaws. She's a life member of the WMS. She's a trustee of her church in Orlando, Florida, St. Mark AME. She has served as president of the 11th District WMS, as Supervisor Young just recounted. She is a graduate, a HBCU graduate of Hampton Institute, now Hampton University, Case Western Reserve University in the great state of Ohio. Yay! Supervisors from Ohio, FYI, if you didn't know about my love for LeBron James. And attended and completed her studies with honor at Tulane University Law School. Her legal areas of expertise are in education, elder law, and estate planning. She is a wonderful, esteemed colleague of mine. I have learned so much from Harriet. She has a deep bench of knowledge legally, but most importantly, she is a woman of God. And when I say an asset to the African Methodist Episcopal Church connectionally, I mean that with the deepest esteem. Please welcome Harriet Brown Burke of the 11th Episcopal District as she brings her presentation.
Good morning to everyone. I am so very happy to be here this morning. To the Bishop of the 6th Episcopal District, Bishop Reginald Jackson, to my friend, your supervisor, Christy Davis Jackson, Esquire, to former supervisors who live in the 6th District. And Dr. Young, you took my thunder. I was going to say to Dr. Adams, who allowed me to be the first third vice president for the 11th District, and to Dr. Young, whom I served under, who Bishop Young appointed me, and we worked so wonderfully. Both of these supervisors helped to make the 11th District what it is right now. To my fellow connectional luminaries that reside in your district, Lisa Wickham, Shirley Washington, and Dr. Linda Frazier, to the Episcopal President, Dr. Sylvia Moore, to your Episcopal YPD Director, Lorelei Johnson, and I just remembered, Joy, don't kill me, but I forgot, to your YPD President, Joy Stinson, former Episcopal Presidents, Shirley Washington, Barbara Hudson, and Rosemary Rhodes Miller, Esquire, whom I've also had the pleasure of working with, missionaries at every level, and clergy, laity, visitors, and friends. When you think about the 6th District, you also have to remember my friend, Rosa Baxter. I want you to know I am very happy to be here today. And I hope that this morning, since you're giving up a wonderful Saturday morning, we will both learn together. Little bit about me. I'm a former YPD president of the Old West Florida Conference. So you know how long ago that was. I am also a former local YPD director and president in the 4th District, as well as the South Area YPD director for the Chicago Conference. I served again as, and when I say the first third vice president, by that I mean I was the first person to be a third vice president after the Constitution changed in 2003. Remember, that was when we added several new officers. And again, I served as the Episcopal WMS president under Dr. Young. I am an attorney, but today we're not talking legalese, we're talking Constitution and bylaws. So if you're expecting a lot of erudite verbiage from me, you won't get it today, but you call me, we'll talk about that at another time. I changed my screen and I put up the connectional logo that was given to us by our president, because I was going to show you the Constitution and bylaws, but your supervisor has done that. We're right on point. Every time you do something, you got to think about your tools. So our tools for today are the current Constitution and bylaws and the previous Constitution and bylaws, because you can only know where you're going when you figure out where you've been. Next slide. I always start my presentations in this way because you've got to get wisdom. So think about these three versions of the Bible. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding, according to the King James. Then the Message Bible says, above all and before all, do this, get wisdom. Write this at the top of your list, get understanding. The NIV says it best to me. The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. Though it costs all you have, get understanding. Next slide. And here we are today for a seminar on the Constitution and bylaws of the Women's Missionary Society of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I bring you greetings from our connectional president, Dr. Deborah Taylor King, who appointed me as the chair of Connectional Constitution and Bylaws Committee. My disclaimer is your supervisor could have done this workshop because she was an integral part in us shaping what the Constitution is today. But I appreciate that she deferred to me. So this is good practice for all of us. Next slide. Again, wisdom is, think about this in this context. Knowledge is the accumulation of information. Understanding is the grasping or comprehension of that information. But wisdom is the application of the information which one understands. Next slide. Here's what we plan to do today. We're going to discuss what the Constitution and bylaws is. We are going to present the proposals and revisions as ratified by the 2021 General Conference and the rationale for those changes. And then we'll talk about the process for submitting legislative changes, policy considerations, and what those timelines will be. Next slide. As we start this presentation, as Supervisor Jackson said, we owe it all to Attorney Rita Beelan, who was the previous Constitution and Bylaws chair. She shaped our whole process and we are better for it. So we have a quick poll. You see on the screen the questions, but you also see the poll. Let's see where the 6th district is as we start. So get ready. This is true and false, very easy. The first question, the local society should meet at least 10 times per year. Choose one. The local society should meet at least 10 times per year. True or false? Number 2, quadrennial delegates are elected at the conference level. One choice, true or false. Quadrennial delegates are elected at the conference level. Question 3, it is not necessary to have a local financial secretary. True or false? It is not necessary to have a local financial secretary. Reverend John, do you want to share the results after each question or can we do them all?
They can do them all and then I'll share it. Right now, we only have 2 people participating in the poll, so everyone should be able to scroll and see it even while you're talking.
Okay, come on guys, let's participate. Okay, question 3. And now question 4. White attire is required at each conference meeting. True or false? White attire is required at each conference meeting. Question 5. The WMS Foundation is a separate private entity. True or false? The WMS Foundation is a separate private entity. Someone has entered that the poll has disappeared. Question 6, you can only hold one office above the local level. True or false? You can only hold one office above the local level. Question 7. Okay, we're going back. Let's see. Question 7. The conference president appoints the area directors. The conference president appoints the area directors. True or false? Okay, Reverend John, someone saying that it's showing the poll is closed, but it's now open again?
Yes, I
Okay.
closed it down and reopened it, so everybody who did participate, just re-participate again.
Okay. And this is the last one. The Episcopal level executive board includes past Episcopal presidents. True or false? The Episcopal level executive board includes past Episcopal presidents. True or false? We're giving some time for people who weren't able to participate to come back, because we're going to see where the 6th district is as we start. And then we'll come back to our post-test at the end.
It's moving well. Those of you that probably more than likely on a cell phone calling in, listening, you may not be able to participate in the poll. But those that have on their computers or mobile devices and can see the Zoom screen, you should be able to see the poll and scroll along the side. So far, we have 37% participated in the poll. And Dr. Burke, these answers are very interesting.
I'm sorry?
I said these responses are very interesting.
I thought they would be.
And if you can't see it, it may be just your device, because everybody else
Right.
can see it. Some devices don't allow polls to be shared.
We have 113 people who can participate. So Reverend John, I'll leave that to you. We'll save about another minute and hopefully people will respond, but we'll take whatever percentage we have.
I want to stop it whenever you tell me.
Okay, we're doing fine. Let's see if we can get to, okay. We'll try to get to 70 and then that'll be it. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the only poll that we're going to have other than the post-test, so please participate. We have one more countdown. We got to 70. I will end the poll now. And Reverend John, you can share the results. Do you prefer that I just scroll down to share them?
You should be able to control it. I made you a co-host, so you can control it.
All right.
Anybody else who has co-host by your name, you have those same privileges, but try not to touch it. I think that's what happened. Our co-host probably stopped it by accident.
All right.
So, yeah. That's why some people probably couldn't see the poll.
Okay. Well, let's quickly
Maybe
look at,
removing some permissions.
all right, let's look at quickly what we have. For the first question, most people thought that was true. Second question, most people thought that one was true. Third question, most people thought it was false. The fourth question, oh, I'm jumping as well, I apologize. We almost have a 50-50 split on the fourth question. The fifth question, almost the same. The sixth question, pretty good, 86%. The seventh question, 66%, thought it was true. And the last question, most people thought it was true. We're going to really get some good information, and it'll be curious to see what your thoughts are when we finish. All right. We're ready. Next slide. Let's think for a minute of what a constitution and bylaws would consist of. When we think of a constitution, that really defines the fundamental elements of an organization. Let me put my, we're in hurricane season in Florida, so I'm in front of my window and it's dark sometimes and then it comes back. So just think about the lighting. Anyway, Constitution defines the fundamental elements of an organization. For instance, the mission, the focus, the membership, who the officers will be, what you're going to be about, that kind of things. But bylaws, however, govern the day-to-day functions and provide guidelines for members to follow. For instance, what will the officers do? What kind of committees will you have? What kind of initiatives will you have? A constitution is rarely changed. I emphasize, rarely changed, but bylaws are revised almost every year based on changes in an organization. As an organization grows, some bylaws may need to be altered. There's several things that happen. But here is the key. The WMS YPD has one constitution, but many bylaws. One constitution, but many bylaws. Next slide. In comparison, let's look at our wonderful country. Since the Constitution was written, there have been 11,770 amendments that were proposed, but only 33 have been voted out of committee. And out of that 33, only 27 have been passed by Congress. And you know, Congress is the House and the Senate. But I tell you the truth, we love amendments to the US Constitution because without them, we would not have the 13th Amendment, which made us free. We would not have the 15th, which gave us the right to vote. And ladies, we certainly wouldn't have the 19th that allowed women to vote. So amendments are important, but you have to be deliberate and very careful when you think about changing a constitution. Next slide. Here's the code we're going to use for today. I don't believe in writing a whole lot that we don't need. We all know these acronyms, but you're going to see them throughout the presentation. WMS, Women's Missionary Society, YPD, Young People's and Children's Division, C&B, Constitution and Bylaws, QC, Quadrennial Convention, and GC, General Conference. Okay, that's our code. Next slide. To really get into it, we've got to review very quickly what happened. In 2019, we gathered in grand numbers in Columbus, Ohio, and we proposed 30 amendments for the WMS and 21 amendments for the YPD. 14 proposed amendments passed for the WMS and 11 passed for the YPD. Out of the 51 submitted, 25 passed. Next slide. Then after that, what happened? Well, we all know COVID came, so we had no general conference in 2020, which meant what? The current constitution and bylaws was still in place until we got a new one. A lot of people wanted to start implementing the changes that we voted on, but technically that was a little premature. But in 2021 at General Conference, our revised CMB was ratified in 2021. Next slide. And here are some of the things we did. Now, this is going to be different than we usually would see it. We see previous language, language that you want to change, and then we give the rationale. I wanted to do it a little differently so you can kind of see where we were and where we've come from. So my other document that I'm looking at is the Constitution and Bylaws packet that we sent to everyone. All the delegates got that. So I'm gonna let you know, I'm gonna let you know as well which actual amendment that was, because some of you might want to go back and look at your book to see. So look at the first one that we dealt with, and this was from the Constitution, Article 3, Section 2. The previous language said the organization shall have and may exercise all powers assigned to nonprofit organizations by the District of Columbia, etc. The proposed amendment, the particular writer felt that we should include African countries in the incorporation. Part of it, if you go back and look, and that's Amendment 1 that was in the booklet, the person felt that our districts outside of the United States were not covered. They didn't feel that their laws were a part of what we were doing in the incorporation. As the Quadrennial Convention looked at this, our disposition was, when the C&B committee met, we felt that this is a matter we needed to refer to the AME General Council, and we deferred voting indefinitely. And for those of you who are parliamentarians, you know that that's appropriate under Roberts because it allows us then to come back and deal with the matter. Now let's think very carefully. We are incorporated in the District of Columbia. Our primary focus or our primary membership is in the United States, but we do have many countries in Africa. We did not feel that we could go and incorporate in every African country, but we wanted that to be a decision for our General Council. We have not heard, but we voted 93% that this amendment would pass. Next slide. And let me say, remember, as I'm going along, if there are any questions that you have, put them in the chat or jot them down, and at the end, we will come back and deal with questions. The second amendment, Article 7, Section 1, pages 3 and 4, we're still in the Constitution. The previous language, the elected officers of the organization shall be, and you know the 16 previous officers that we had. This proposer felt that we needed to add a financial secretary as a new office for checks and balance of our funding. The revised language includes the position of financial secretary at all levels where appropriate. This amendment passed 71%. And this is amendment number 3 in our booklet. Now, I applaud the person who put this amendment in from this standpoint in terms of structure. That amendment was listed with every single place in the Constitution that would be affected by this change. And the committee then didn't have to look back and figure out what was going on. So it passed with 71%. That's our second change to our Constitution. Number 3, next slide. This one, again, is still the Constitution, Article 13, Section 1A. This had to do with how we vote to change our amendments. Previous language, the adoption of such an amendment shall require a 2/3 vote of those present and eligible to vote. This was changed because it clarifies the requirement to amend the Constitution. The revised language is this: Adoption of such an amendment shall require a 2/3 vote of those present and voting. When you say those present and voting, you don't worry about abstentions at that point. It's whoever is there and they vote. Think about it. You can have 1,000 people at a meeting. With this amendment, present and voting, if only 2 of those people vote and both of them vote in the affirmative, whatever that is passed. This is very critical. So think about that, 89%. I talked to our connectional parliamentarian last night, again, just for that clarity. So think about the first part, present and eligible to vote. We would then have to look at everybody who was eligible and get 2/3 of that number. This number says present and voting. Number 4, the next change. This is for the Constitution, next slide. And this is the same, but it deals with the bylaws. Because you know our section in our Constitution, we have how you amend the Constitution and how you amend the bylaws. So again, what we have now, any of these, when we get to QC, we are going to vote those on all of the amendments, 2/3 of those present and voting. So it really means if you abstain, you don't even have a vote in any of this. It's not even considered. Okay, next slide. We didn't have previous language for this one. Now we're in the connectional bylaws. If you think about it, on the section that talks about quadrennial convention delegates, it just started out, there shall be 5 elected delegates from every conference with the voting membership, etc. This is on page 9 of the CMB. You can go back and look at that, or as we're going along. This proposal was necessary because we wanted to make sure that the quadrennial convention delegates were elected by plurality vote. Now think about that. If you have 5, plurality vote simply means whoever gets the highest is number 1, whoever gets the next is number 2, 3, 4, 5. That passed with 80% of people in agreement. 80% of the delegates were in agreement. So that was the rationale for that change. And we're still in the the connectional bylaws. Next slide. No language for this one either. Why? Because now we've added a financial secretary to the list of officers. So instead of 16 connectional officers, we now have 17. This is on page 11 of our Constitution. The elected officers shall be the president, etc. This office, financial secretary, comes directly after the treasurer. We had to renumber, and that was more Scriveners than anything else. We had to renumber all of the officers and make sure that our financial secretary was included in the new Constitution as an officer. And that was Amendment 12. I'm giving you the amendment numbers in the books because I think it's important if you go back, those of you who are not delegates, if you can talk to a delegate, just look at that book and that'll give you an idea of what things were submitted and how the committee handled them. Next slide. Still in the connectional bylaws, we had no language previously. Why? Because this is that new office, financial secretary. But the revised language is this: qualifications, any candidate for the position of financial secretary must have at least a bachelor's degree or its equivalent, and you can read the rest. And B, the duties shall maintain an independent set of records of all financial transactions. That's proposed amendment 19, and that passed with 75% of the vote. Next slide. Okay, we're now at the conference bylaws. Would you believe after all of this time, we really did not have in the conference section anything about paying dues? It was alluded to, but now at 85%, this is Amendment 21, this was the rationale: to require members to pay dues at the local area, and conference levels to be eligible to vote. Those districts that have areas were kind of left out, and people assumed all I got to do is pay my local dues and I'm fine. This clarifies this new section under the voting that says paying local, area, and conference dues where it applies. Why do we say where it applies? All districts don't have areas. So if they don't, we're talking about paying local and conference dues. I've gotten a couple of calls that people say, we ought to take where it applies out. We don't, because that is important. It applies in some places and in others it doesn't. This is Amendment 21, as I had said. I hope you get a chance to look at that delegate book from last quadrennial to kind of give you a really good sense of what's going on. Next slide. Still in the conference bylaws, page 35, previous language. They shall be active participants on the local level and attend at least 2 annual convention meetings. This person that proposed felt this needed to be changed because we wanted to require quadrennial convention delegates to be active on all levels. So the revised language is this: they shall be active on all levels and have attended at least 2 annual conference meetings. You know, in some districts, and I know this does not happen in the 6th because it definitely doesn't happen in the 11th. We know that you just can't walk into a conference meeting and be elected a quadrennial delegate. You've got to show some participation, some activity. This was really a hotbed issue because, as you see, it passed with 92% of the vote, and it's Amendment 22. Next slide. Still in the conference bylaws, page 35, previous language. They shall be active participants on the local level and attend at least 2 annual conference meetings. I gave you in the previous one the new language, but this is the rationale for the change: to assure that candidates for quadrennial convention have already attended at least 2 meetings. And that includes those who are former YPDers. I am so happy that years ago we changed where our YPD members who were coming over didn't have to wait 4 years. If they had been active for those 2, they could then be elected a delegate. But what this proposal wanted to clarify is you had to be active on all levels and already have attended 2 meetings before you run for delegate. So kind of look back carefully over page 35, Article 4, Section 8, to kind of give a little more flavor. That was Amendment number 23, and it passed almost overwhelmingly at 97%. Next slide. Here is one that kind of changed. Would you believe after all this time, there was really nothing in the conference constitution and bylaws section that talked about paying expenses? Now you see the passage rate with this was kind of mixed, but look at the previous language. The expenses of the conference and local presidents are to be paid by the local level of which that officer is an active member. This proposal was done to clarify that each level should pay for their own leader and to decrease the cost for local societies. Very important. You know, of course, if you're a conference president, you're a member of a local society, correct? So your local society, in the past, when you ran for office, they had to be on board because you were then saying that your church would take care of you as an officer. So that was just for presidents. The revised language in the new section in the conference bylaws is this. There's now a sustentation section, and it says, the expenses of the conference president are to be paid by the conference level. The expenses of the area chairpersons are to be paid by the area level. And this is Amendment 28. Next slide. So if we change that, we then had to jump down to the local bylaws to change that area, because that was the only section that had sustentation listed. Previous language, we've already said, it was from the local bylaws that said the local church had to pay for both the conference and local presidents. But this clarified and then helped each level pay for their own leader. Revised language at the local level. The expenses of the local president are to be paid by the local level of which that officer is a member. It's always been curious to me. Previously, we were saying of which that officer is an active member. It should be a given that the person ought to be active if they are a conference officer. Next slide. Previous language, educate, provide opportunities for worship and study. This proposal was submitted to clarify and revise the language of local society responsibilities. The new language states if you look at our Constitution, we have for local societies what their responsibilities should be. So D is educate, period, provide opportunities to worship and study and share yearly study book curriculum beyond its members and congregation. I think this is crucial because what we're saying is we don't just sit with our study guide in missionary meetings. We go beyond that to the church membership, to the congregation, to the community. So some people look to us as no big deal. It's a difference without a distinction, or a distinction without a difference. But if you think about it, everything starts at the local level. So if we're able to share what we do and let people know what we're about, I think it gives us much more of a presence. This is Amendment 29. Next slide. We're still at the local level. Previous language for this change, the local society shall participate in the meetings, work, and activities of the conference and area, if applicable, to which it is assigned. How curious, we did not have the Episcopal District before. So this amendment adds the Episcopal District as a level for participation by the local society. The revised language is local societies shall participate in the meetings, work, and activities of the Episcopal District, the conference, and the area, if applicable, to which it is assigned. That was 90% of the delegates felt that that was very important. And that is Amendment 26. Let me share this. I know, again, this doesn't happen in the 6th district, and it certainly doesn't happen in the 11th. You don't have any local churches that refuse to come to Episcopal district meetings. I know you don't. Well, this was important because if you are local, you need to know what's happening at every level of the church, definitely every level of the organization. So we've clarified for those who say, there are a lot of people that say, well, it's not in the Constitution. Well, guess what? It is now. We're expecting to start seeing them if we're not already at our meeting. So this is the local level. If you can see from what I presented so far, we had changes in our Constitution. We had changes in our connectional bylaws. We had changes in our conference bylaws, and we had changes in our local bylaws. At this particular time for the QC, we did not have Episcopal district amendments, but there were changes because of the new office that we had, financial secretary. Next slide. The final change for the WMS was, yay, a new appendix, WMS colors and attire. This codifies the colors and attire for all Episcopal districts. And I just put in parentheses, white with a touch of blue. That was past 68%. Our membership felt that that was important. This is Amendment 31. I encourage you to kind of look at that. So watch what the committee had to do. We made the amendment that passed for colors, Appendix A, that was changed. Appendix B was the previous robing ceremony. That's now Appendix B. Appendix C is the previous YPD colors and uniforms, and it added jersey and khaki trousers. WMS members, the YPDers have always had their color and uniform. We didn't. It's nowhere in the Constitution. It's been alluded to, but I think all of us kind of always knew if you're going to a WMS meeting, you have your white with your touch of blue. So now it is officially in the Constitution. We know that that is what we're expected to do. Giving you a little hint for some of the true and false questions. Think about that. Next slide. Okay, just the WMS part. I'm going to YPD next. Let's think about this. Do the poll again, and let's see how you really, really did. Okay, I think we have 120, I'm sorry, people who can vote. So let's see what you come up with this time. The local society should meet at least 10 times per year. True or false? Question 1. Meeting 10 times a year. True or false? Okay, this says 100%. We're getting there. As you're still voting, which is a very good thing. I see we were at 75%. Guys, you already know this is false. The Constitution says you should meet at least 8 times a year. Now, some societies meet every month. I think that's wonderful. You can do several different things. Your official meeting could be 8 times a year. Your other meetings, you could have your commissions meet or different things or have a social. But we already know you're not required to meet 10 times a year. The Constitution says at least 8. But local presidents, if you're here, I'm not suggesting, oh, we got to stop our meetings. Absolutely not. It simply means that you have to meet at least 8, but you can meet monthly. In my local society, we meet every month except July. And on the other times that we're even meeting, we also have a social with that. So it's important to keep your members engaged. Number 2, quadrennial delegates are elected at the conference level. Yay, most people got that right. You got it right before, and you got it right this time. This is in the Constitution, and it's in the conference bylaws. Page 35 for the conference bylaws, page 9 for the Constitution. Okay. Third question. It is not necessary to have a local financial secretary. That was a trick question. If you think about it, it depends on what kind of leadership you have. Are you doing the team leadership model, or are you doing traditional? If you're doing traditional, you should have 17 officers. If not, the Constitution gives you the option of the officers that you can use. Now, we need to be clear. If you have a small church, why would you try to have all of those officers? You're not going to. You want to engage your members, but you don't want to overwork them. There was a small church in West Florida that used to call their officers steward T's. That meant you were a steward and you were a trustee. So think about that. If you only have a few, you don't need to do that. So this one is really, it depends. That's a good lawyer answer. It depends on what leadership style that you decide, whether you will have a local financial secretary. Number 4, white attire is required at each conference meeting. Now, guys, you know that that's false. We're not going to require you to wear it, but think about this. If I were a conference president, I may say, I would like for everyone to wear white, on such and such date. Perfectly permissible. Putting in the colors does not negate that, but it's not a requirement. And I've gotten some calls where some people say they're being fined if they don't have the right attire. Well, we're not quite that formal. We are a Christian organization. There's some of our secular organizations that do all that, but I hope we don't have people that are doing it. So this is a good, it depends, the white attire one. Okay, number 5, the WMS Foundation is a separate private entity. I am surprised that people don't know that. This is on page 4 of our Constitution, Article 10, Section 1. Yes, the WMS Foundation is a part of our organization, but it is a separate entity because there are separate bylaws, separate incorporation, etc. We give kudos to the Adams team, Bishop Adams, and to Dr. Adams for bringing the foundation to the WMS under Dr. Peck's leadership, and we got it set up and established, and I encourage all of you to contribute if you have not. So remember, it's a separate private entity, but it is still a part of the WMS. And let me put a pin here because I've gotten this question. There are some people who are saying, well, if you say you can only have one office, why are all these people who are officers and other things also participating in the foundation? Remember, separate private entity. There's a different set of bylaws for them, but they are also mentioned in the Constitution, so we're still fine. Number 6, you can only hold one office above the local level. I think most people got that, true or false, and that is true. So let me give you our reference. Page 13 is Article 7, Section 2. Page 11 is Article 6, Section 4. What this means is, we have our term limits and we have all of that, and that's fine. What this means is you can only hold one above the local level, whether you are elected or appointed. Elected is on page 13, but appointed is on page 11 because it says, even those appointed by the president. We have so very many members that should not be an issue. We're going to always find some people who will be eligible to serve and who can serve. So just kind of think about that. Number 7, for the YPDers, the conference president appoints the area directors. Oh, come on. You got 71% thinking it was true. That is false. The conference president appoints area chairpersons. Who appoints the area YPD directors? The conference YPD director in consultation with the conference president. That's Article 9, Section 2 on page 40. And people are probably thinking that because that's what the Constitution stated before we made the change. Number 8, people got this right. This was new also. Episcopal level executive board includes past Episcopal presidents. That was correct. So that was Episcopal. I tried to give you something from the Constitution, from YPD, from Episcopal, conference, local, and connectional bylaws. Okay, now we are ready to go to YPD. It would be lovely to stop right here and let you bring your questions for the WMS, but I think it's still better if we go ahead and then we'll do that all in one together. Okay, Reverend John, next slide. We're now ready for the Constitution and bylaws changes from the YPD. And I've got to tell you, I was so very impressed by everything that was presented and the thought process with rationale that our young people put in place. This is proposed amendment Y1, as we put it in the book. It passed with 89% in agreement. Previous, any young person of the church between 2 and 26 years of age who is active and in good and regular standing in their local organization. There needed to be a change to clarify, because actually what we have means only the people who are 3 to 25 are regular members. The revised language simply changed between to ages. So what we have now is any young person of the church any young person of the church ages 2 to 26 are active and in good and regular standing in their local organization. They are regular members of the YPD. This is section 4, article 4, section 1, under the connectional bylaws. And in the YPD handbook, page 126. Connectional Director Ringo had given me the handbook before it was published, so that we could get our sections and everything together. So I think this still flows with what's in the YPD handbook. Remember, there is a YPD handbook that gives information about the Constitution and bylaws. It's the same. And so YPDers, as you're looking at that, it's the same. Okay, number 2. Next slide. Here was the one that still gives me concern, but we've covered it now. Previous language, be at least 13 years of age, but not more than 22 years of age. This has to do with electing officers. This has always been an issue, but I really think that this proposal clarifies it. Now, there were 2 different proposals, 2. I think the best one passed, but it was just very curious. As a matter of fact, it passed with 93% of the vote. The first one was a YPDer under age 22 at the time of election will complete a 4-year term before age 26. That was rationale. The second one was to add by the established application deadline. Think about that. If you did that by the established application deadline, you could have a birthday the day after the deadline, and you would still be 28 at the end of your term as connectional president. So the revised language states, be at least 13 years of age, but not more than 22 years of age at the time of election. So I think that covers that, because I understand there had been some consternation about people who had aged out, but they were still in office. So I think that clarifies it. This is Article 8, Section 5D of the connectional YPD bylaws. Next slide. Here is another one. And a lot of this, for me, was really just cleaning up some things, but we did go through the amendment process for them. Previously, it stated the 3rd vice president shall serve as the chairperson of the International Awareness Committee. This was a good catch by the YPDers, because the committee, International Awareness Committee, is not identified in the CNB, and its purpose is really identical to the International Relations Committee. So it was voted that the revised language 4B would simply state, serve as the chairperson of the International Relations Committee. So there's no longer a mention of an International Awareness Committee, because that basically was the same. We're not aware anymore. We're doing international relations. And that was Amendment Y7, and it passed with 92% of the vote. Next slide. Here is pretty similar, but I think we've clarified something. Previously, it said, the International Relations Committee shall, A, provide opportunities for children, youth, and young adults in the United States and those overseas districts to exchange ideas, programs, and objectives. The change here was necessary because we want to move away from the term overseas districts. I remember Passion Musa, who was from the 20th district, when we worked together, she said, Harriet, you're overseas to us. And we forget that sometimes. I want to encourage us to use the term international for those districts that are outside of the United States, because I laughed, I said, Passion, you're absolutely right. And I think it's Reverend Passion now, but I said, you're absolutely right. We're looking at you as overseas and you're there looking at us as overseas. So if we kind of tag, as the young folks would say, I think that's still correct. If we tag the districts 14 through 20 as international, because they have more than one country, I think we'll be safe. But here is what we did. 6A now reads, provide opportunities for children, youth, and young adults to exchange ideas, programs, and objectives for districts 1 through 20. You see, we still had the separation in the previous one, but this one is inclusive of everyone. Next slide. Again, this was like a wonderful save to clarify some clear errors in wording. I would think that Scrivener's errors could have done this, but we had an amendment. Previous, the Episcopal Executive Board shall be composed of connectional officers, elected or appointed, who reside in the conference, the Episcopal President and Conference Director in an advisory capacity. The revised language states the Episcopal Executive Board shall be composed of connectional officers, elected or appointed, who reside in the Episcopal District. Look above. Why would we be concerned at the Episcopal Executive Board of our officers that resided in the conference? It should be our officers that resided in the Episcopal District. And the second part, the Episcopal Director and Conference Directors in an advisory capacity. The way we had it, the Episcopal President couldn't even participate in the Episcopal Executive Board. The YPD President would be precluded. So this was a very good catch by the YPDers, because we have now made the reference correct. It's not the Episcopal President and Conference Director, it's the Episcopal Director and the Conference Presidents that will be in an advisory committee to the YPD. Okay, this one passed with 86% of the vote, and it's Y12. I'm giving you those again because go back and look at that book. There are some very interesting things. Next slide. Previously, the duties and responsibilities of the conference director shall be E, appoint after consultation with the conference president and area chairperson. Why would we have a conference president, a conference YPD president appointing an area chairperson? What a mistake. We missed it on a couple of times. I felt it could have been Scrivener's errors, but we got it straight now. The title should be consistent on all levels of the YPD. So it now states appoint after consultation with the conference president, the area directors. Makes sense. This one passed with 68% and it's Y13. Next slide. Okay. This one was very curious. We had a little contention with that. This didn't seem to be that much of a concern in the continental United States, but in our international districts, it was quite a bit. And look at it. Their rationale was the conference meets more frequently than the Episcopal District or connection. Therefore, waiting for 90 days for an unruly officer would harm the conference. This is language from the amendment. And this was Y14, Y15. What they were talking about in our international districts, they don't get a chance to get together as often as we do. And a lot of people may not come. Well, if they have an officer that's not functioning, 90 days is too long to wait for that person. It was revised to 60 days, but the original proposal was 30 days. And we went back with another amendment to say we would split it. So it was 60 days. So after someone is not functioning for 60 days, there's a process in the Constitution that allows you to remove that person from office. And that passed with 74% of the vote. Next slide. Okay, here we go for voting. Previously, voting members of the conference shall be elected officers of the conference, connectional and episcopal officers residing in the conference area, local presidents, and members who have registered and attended at least one annual convention of the conference and are active in the local organization. This needed to change to align the local and conference articles to state delegates instead of members. Look up at the top where it says conference area local presidents and members. We're not talking about members. They are delegates. You know, we send delegates to the conference. So that's why members was changed, who have registered and attended. This is Article 8, Section 3 for the YPD, and it passed with 93% of the vote. It's Y16. Next slide. Previously, this was Appendix B. That's where it was. But I mean, it's still Appendix B now, but it was B before we added colors. So the rationale for this was to give us the jerseys and the khakis. Again, this is from our districts who have some concerns. They may not be able to get the white blazers or dark pants or whatever else. And if you look at it, and I've watched over the years, our YPDers have kind of gone to khaki anyway. This just, again, codifies those changes that we made. They're still forest green and white. They're still white blazer or jersey, khaki trousers, white blazer or jersey, again, in their information. Okay, this one was a good, overwhelming passage as well. I think a lot of people just wanted to see that in writing. It is now the current Appendix C that deals with the YPD colors and uniforms, but it was Appendix B. So that's Y21, and it passed at 89% of the vote. Now, what I've given to you is everything that we revised in the Constitution and bylaws. And now we're going to take some time for some questions. If there are some confusing things, hopefully I've clarified some things for you, but if you might be even more confused. So let's take a moment. Give me some questions. Joy or Reverend Young?
Yes, ma'am. So I have a question from Ms. Crystal Shakir, and she says, under Article 4, membership, Section 3, page 35, may you clarify shall be in good and regular standing?
I love that question. Tell me again, page 35?
Page 35, yes.
And I didn't even think I was going to need this, but I pulled it out because people always ask. This is from the discipline, good and regular standing, page 819, the current discipline. You know, we don't have our new one printed, but none of this changed. The terminology full, good, and regular standing, as well as full communion, are specifically and generally as a qualification for eligibility to hold any office or membership in the AME Church. Inclusive in this terminology is an acceptance that one is to be governed by the doctrine and discipline of the AME Church, to regularly attend worship and other means of grace. That means come to more than church. You got to be active, to contribute regularly to the support of the gospel, the church, its benevolent enterprises, and the poor, and to give one's time and talents to the various ministries of the church. This is from our discipline, and it's on currently on page 819. What it actually means is when you think of this, it usually comes up when you're doing credentials for a conference. And in most districts, there is a section where the local pastor has to sign. Now, let me see, will I say I'll step out of my role? I will still be in it. Why would you think that you could come outside of your church if you haven't been active in your church? That's just a cause for pause. So if your pastor is not able to sign that you are active on the local level, that's what the good and regular standing means. Notice it says, and other means of grace. Some people think all I got to do is show up at church. That may not be considered active. God has blessed all of us that we can do more than one thing. You know, when you join the church, we usually say, look at a ministry that you're interested in, participate in something. So good and regular standing starts at the local level. That cannot be determined beyond that, but we do in terms of looking at running for office, being on a committee, or being a convention delegate, a QC delegate. You have to be active there. Our hierarchy is from connection, Episcopal, conference, area, local. But in this particular instance, good and regular standing is determined at the local church first. Any further questions with that one? It is a sticky, most people do. I get a lot of questions about that. Next question, Joy.
Yes, this question comes from our 6th District YPD Director Johnson. It says, can you clarify the appointment of area directors? Who appoints them?
Okay, I think we did that with our amendment. It is the conference YPD director appoints the area directors in consultation with the president. That's in there because remember, the conference president is the person who is responsible for the conference. So the area director, the YPD director works under the conference president as an elected officer. So in consultation with the conference president, you are allowed, if you will, to appoint area directors. So that means a conference YPD director just can't go out and name the people that she wants. You have to come back with the conference president to say, these are the people that I'm interested in having to serve in this capacity. And together, that's a decision that's made. It's very clear, and I think I quoted where it is. We did clarify that because to me, it would have just been something to clean up. Previously in the Constitution, it was stated incorrectly. It said the conference president appointed the area directors, but it is the conference YPD director that appoints them in consultation with the president.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
When we say conference president, are we talking in terms of the missionary president or the YPD?
Conference WMS president? That is why. Thank you for that clarification. And we got to look at that for next time to make sure. Remember, we had something a little confused at that Episcopal Executive Board, because the way it was stated, you would think that the Episcopal YPD president was only in an advisory capacity. And that was not the case. So remember I said in the beginning, when you think about, we have one constitution, but a lot of bylaws, we don't really state enough in the YPD bylaws that we're talking about YPD. And that was one area. So I'm putting a note for myself, I already have. And Supervisor Jackson held the Constitution up. I laugh when I look at people's constitutions. They try to keep them as clean as they keep their Bibles. Mine is so mixed up because it helps me remember different things. You're supposed to write it. It belongs to you. So write it. It'll help you remember. But thank you, Joy. That's one that we do have to look at and make sure we indicate, because that's why it was clarified. Because people were thinking you were talking about the conference YPD president appointing area directors. And so, no, it is the conference YPD director in consultation with the conference WMS president that you will do that. Because remember, the conference WMS president is responsible for the WMS and the YPD. But that's a good question for everybody. We're going to put that down and make sure we kind of flesh that out a little bit. Okay, next question.
The last question I see is, will the PowerPoint be shared today with the participants on Zoom?
I always love that question. Let me tell you, this is my feeling. All of this material is available, and Joy, you were at LTI when people asked for my presentation. I sent it to them. Have no problem with that. But I bet you can't explain it all. But if you look at it, you will be able to. Yeah, I'll be happy to give that to your supervisor and your president and your YPD director, and you can do whatever, because if I do it again the next time, it'll be totally different anyway, so it won't matter. I laughed when I knew that was going to be a question, but I think about the last time I was with you was May 26th of 2018. And I looked at that presentation and I had to laugh myself. I'm a clear black and white PowerPoint person. So since we're at the end and we're talking YPD, I have a wonderful area YPD director who did that beautiful presentation that you saw. Because if it had just been me, all you would have had was the regular black and white just typing. So by all means, we know we need our YPDers to help us do what we need to do. And anyone who wants the presentation after we finish, I'll be happy to send it. I don't have a problem with that. Just the part we have, or even the rest, because we still now, these are the questions, but we still have a little more to go thinking about submission of what we're going to do. But yes, I'll be happy to share the presentation. It's not copyrighted because I'm giving information that's already ours, but it is my intellectual property. Just those 3 questions?
Yes, ma'am. I just put a question out to make sure that there weren't any more questions, and I don't see any more populating in the chat.
Supervisor Young or Supervisor Jackson or President Moore or Director Johnson or President Stinson, if you have some questions, we can entertain those now.
Dr. Burke, there's another question in the chat. Joy, you wouldn't have been able to see it because they sent it directly to me. And so it's from Miss Faye Penniman. She wants to know, can there be clarification if local societies are required to pay the life member registration for meetings or explain obligations of what that is? That question needs some more clarity.
Oh, yeah, it does. But I think what you're talking about, now let me explain what the CMB does and does not do. I think it's a wonderful document that gives us our floor of what we need to do, but each district determines their process for several different things. So we start in our organization at the local level and we go up. For instance, I'll use our attire as an example. Your supervisor and your president may say, we're having Founders Day, and I want all the WMS and YPD to wear purple. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that because you have gotten that direction as a request. So when you're asking about who pays what, that's going to be an internal decision by an Episcopal district. Remember, we have added now in there that for the local level, you also need to be active at the Episcopal level. It kind of concerns me that a lot of people think, oh, Episcopal, that doesn't mean anything. Oh, yes, it does. That's where your primary floor or your beginning of everything you're doing, your initiatives, everything that happens, how the district will present itself outside of the district, what you do, how you look, all of that. As we prepare to come to quadrennial, your supervisor wanted this workshop so all of you would be on the same page. I remember in 2003, the 11th district was in Texas when we came to quadrennial. And we had a person to get up from our delegation, we didn't catch him in time, who got up and said, why did we have to pay so much registration for this meeting? Nobody wants that to happen again. That's something you ask in your Episcopal district. Talk about that at a different level. That's why I love the fact we have so many levels in our organization, and you go up the level and you figure out different things. I commend Dr. Young when she was our supervisor. I'm not suggesting that we didn't with anyone else, but you had open forum to talk to her, to get any questions you needed asked. And I know that's the same for Supervisor Jackson, because I'm looking at both of them here. You need to have that open dialogue. So I appreciate this question, but it is whatever process that you have in your district that you will follow. And if you have concerns about it, talk about it. That's what we're doing today, just discussing to make sure that all of us are on the same page. When I was working full-time, I had 135 people that I supervised. And what I said to them is, I worked for the school district and I did presentations all the time. And I said to them, whatever is going on in the school district, I want to hear it from you. Not that you're going to be able to solve it, but it is embarrassing as a leader for you to hear something about your area and nobody's talked to you about it. So that's what I'm saying. We all have to be a cohesive unit. And we've had this discussion in the 11th district as we prepare for you to come to us next July. So we know that's a question, and I'm glad that it's there, and write that one down. That's a discussion that you can have internally, but it's not in violation of anything. That's the Constitution and bylaws. But it's funny when the question also included life membership. I don't care how you slice it. I've been involved with the committee since '99. There hasn't been a time that there haven't been 50 million amendments for life membership. And the one that nobody wants to pass is we got to stop replacing deceased life members. If we don't, we will be an organization of life members. No group, no organization anywhere has that. It's a sticky wicket, but ladies and gentlemen, we've got to still think about it. Okay?
Yep.
Any more questions? Dr. Young or Supervisor Jackson?
Supervisor Jackson?
No, go ahead, Dr. Young.
Go ahead, Young.
I heard you say you're going to talk about process, okay. Are you going to talk about the work of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee on the connectional level?
Yes, I am.
Well, then I will
the next section.
I will be quiet until then.
Well, please just be quiet now. When we get to that, add anything that you see is a good part. Okay. Now, Supervisor Jackson.
I was going to echo what you've already spoken with concerning the protocol and processes within the local, within the area, within the Episcopal level, the conference level, the Episcopal level, such that people respected the opportunity to bring their queries to the appropriate body, such that when we go to Orlando, we are going with one voice, one district ready to participate. I think you've done a marvelous job at really bringing us back to where we are. This is the foundation for the WMS and YPD so that we can be in good order. And I thank you for that, and please continue.
Okay, now we are ready to talk about the process for submitting legislation. Reverend John.
trying to put some things in the chat.
Okay.
Let everyone know that this presentation will be available on the 6th District WMS website, and then they can view it again on the YouTube link that I provided in the chat.
Miss Harriet, we have one raised hand if you want to get that one before we start again.
Okay.
John, can you unmute them so they can ask the question?
Was that me, John?
Yes, it was, Dr. Baxter. Go ahead.
Well, you see, I was born BBC before they had computers and all this interesting stuff, and I was afraid to try to do what you told me to do about the chat because I didn't want to lose the whole thing, which I've experienced it all. And I would imagine there's some others on here that has some technological things. But anyway, Harriet, you said something back in the presentation that had something to do with voting, but I want you to, okay, you said voting present, what you said, present and accounted for?
Yes.
At some place.
Present and voting.
Okay, present and voting, yeah.
Yes.
Now that's done, what's done at the quadrennial when it comes to voting for people to be elected officers? That's not that present, that's present and accounted for, right?
Right. Nothing has changed. What I was giving you is what we agreed to with as it relates to the voting for the constitutional changes and the bylaws changes. That's the language that was switched around.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with voting in the election, the formal election. Okay, okay, because
nothing was changed in the formal election. And how are you this morning, Dr. Baxter?
Bless your heart, you understand where I am. I couldn't know what to do, but
I said hello to you.
I want to thank you.
I said to you hello earlier. You might not have been in here, but I said to my friend Rosa Baxter.
Yes, you have been over the years for a long time. I appreciate you. I love y'all. I tell you, I want to thank everybody.
But thank you for that clarification. By no means have we changed anything that has to do with the election of officers. That part was how we, when we get to the quadrennial, and that's going to be in the next part I'm presenting, when we get there, how we vote for these amendments. That's why in my presentation, I was saying what amendment it was, how many votes. And Supervisor, before I send it to you, I want to go back and put that for the YPD because I want us to see the percentages. It'll kind of give you a flavor for where the delegation was at the time that we voted. But absolutely, thank you for that clarification, Dr. Baxter. It has nothing to do with the election. That voting simply had to do, well, I should say the election. That simply had to do with how much we needed to get the amendment passed for the Constitution and the bylaws. Nothing else has changed. Nothing else has changed, okay? And thank you for participating.
Oh, I can't help it. I can't help it.
We know. Okay, are we ready now for the process for proposal submissions? All right, for the screen you see, during the fall prior to QC, WMS members initiate discussions about changes to the Constitution. I have WMS members. We already know it's inclusive of YPD, and this is why. The YPDers cannot send an amendment themselves. They've got to go through the WMS. And that is a process. We are your parent organization. But look at what the Constitution says, which I love. Amendments can come from Episcopal districts, from conferences, and or local societies. That's Article 13 for amendments and bylaws, page 6. The question I get is, I am an individual. I want to send something directly to the connectional committee. Anything can be done, but is it prudent? We are not a secret society. We are an open society. So why would you think you could circumvent, if you will, your district? I mean, if it's something worthwhile, you should be able to share that at that level, and then it's presented. But either way you do it, look at what our Constitution says. They come from districts, from conferences, and local societies. Any amendment, that's including the YPD and the WMS. So look at number 2. As members, you're going to follow the procedures of your local conference and our Episcopal district regarding submission of proposed amendments. Since she's on here, I will share Dr. Young's process. She wanted to make sure that we discuss this at every level. So at our Episcopal meetings, if there were things that were on people's minds, we talked about it. We thought about things from the district that we wanted to share, and we all understood why we were sharing what was being proposed. Was it always happy, go lucky for everybody? No, but we are an inclusive group. If you are a delegate, I mean, I'm thinking about I'll use the Democratic Party for an example. If you are a delegate for the Democratic Party, clearly you're going to vote with what you are told that comes out of committees. I mean, that's just, why are you a delegate if you don't want to be a team player? So you got to discuss it. So you got to know what you're voting on. So notice I've said whatever has been established in your district, because at this point you're going to the connection, but it would be your Episcopal district that would set the tone for what is coming out of your area. That's number 2. Number 3, after all that gets together, remember this is the fall, proposed amendments are forwarded to the Constitution and Bylaws Committee for submission to the Revisions and Compilation Committee 6 months prior to the Quadrennial Convention. Now, all of you have a calendar. I am not at liberty to share any dates that our president, Dr. King, is giving us, because that's information that's going to come by the end of the month to your supervisor and to your Episcopal president. But you can do the math. We need to be thinking now on what changes you would like to see to the Constitution and bylaws. I've shared with you that it's a very interesting process, but you've got to make sure you look at what you actually want to change and why. So that's what would happen. This is the time that that discussion would occur. Okay, number 4, next slide. Reverend John? Okay, number 4. After you do that, everything is submitted. The proposed amendments packet is prepared and distributed to the Episcopal supervisors and voting members no later than 90 days before the Quadrennial Convention. Now, the difference in 3 and 4 is that you're going to have a certain date to get all of your proposals in. But after your proposals are in, there will be a packet that goes out to all voting members, delegates of the Quadrennial Convention. So you will have that packet, and you're going to then look at that, look at 5. Proposed amendments should be discussed in the district prior to the Quadrennial Convention. If you're a delegate, don't come to Orlando to just start discussing things. You're going to discuss it before you get to Orlando. The current practice is we have readings prior to QC. This is customary. It's not listed in our Constitution and bylaws. It's just something that we've always done. Customary practices are perfectly fine with Roberts, and they're perfectly fine with us. So you're going to have, and usually we have the first reading, then the second reading, and we get to quadrennial and have the third reading. Number 7, The WMS Constitution and Bylaws Committee discusses the proposals and determines financial impact, legality, and feasibility. Let me put a pin here. If you are not interested in working, please tell your supervisor you don't want to be appointed to the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, because it is work. After all of this is done, after our connectional president has gotten all of the proposals, the Constitution and Bylaws Committee starts working. That committee works until time to go to convention. And even when we get to convention, there are things that come up and you are pulled aside. There's some, if you don't mind missing some meetings, some plenary sessions, and working late at night, you are perfect for this committee. But if you just want to be in everything, this is not the place for you, because there is a lot of work to do. Next slide. Number 8, the QC convenes and the proposed amendments are debated and voted on during a plenary session. When you get your agenda, when we get closer to that point, you're going to see the section, the area that says voting on amendments to the Constitution and bylaws. But before we even have that session, there are many other things that will occur. Once we do that, that's number 8. Number 9, the Compilation and Revisions Committee meets to develop the legislative document to present to the General Conference. Now, in your current book, you will see who was on the Compilation and Revisions Committee previously. I have to laugh because someone said to me, the lawyers are taking over. Now, that was a sad state of affairs because it just so happened that there were 3 lawyers, not because they were lawyers, but because they were missionaries who happened to be lawyers. So I say to everybody, being a lawyer is not who I am, it's what I do. Who I am is a missionary who just happens to have been in school a few more days than some other people, that's all. What was a plus, however, with having the persons on the previous committee, we were able to look and see many things that we needed to kind of discuss. And so that same committee, after the vote occurs, is going to look at that and develop the legislative document to present to the General Conference. Now, another piece that's in our Constitution, let me find the page so we can all be clear, because several people have asked me about this too. They're concerned about Scrivener's errors, and that is on page 6. It's Article 14. It simply says that the Revisions and Compilation Committee may correct punctuation, grammar, or numbering where appropriate. We can't correct anything that's going to change the meaning. And none of that has ever been done, to my estimation. So that's what the Compilation and Revisions Committee does. Number 10, the next session of the General Conference either ratifies or rejects the C&B of the WMS. The revised Constitution and bylaws becomes law at the close of General Conference, and then it is printed in the discipline. People have said to me, well, nothing's printed in the discipline, so I don't have to pay any attention to any of that. Look just above it. At the close of the General Conference, whatever has been ratified is now the law. We're still waiting for that printing, but regardless, we do have our Constitution and bylaws right here. It'll just be incorporated. The General Conference has allowed us to continue with what we have. Next slide. Okay, the submission form. Can't show that to you at the moment, but it is forthcoming, but you need to know what it involves, okay? Article title, section and page you want to revise. Section 1, the current language. Please, if you are interested in submitting something, we expect you to give us the current language of whatever it is you want to revise. The next part of the form will have the proposed language. This should be how it will read when revised. That's what you have to do. The next section is rationale, why you want to change the language. If you looked at my presentation, I flipped that because I was simply showing you what was current and why it needed changing and then what we ended up with. But for this, it says current, on our form, we're going to say current language, then proposed language, and then talk about rationale. Then the next section, financial implications. You've got to make sure you know whether or not what you're proposing requires any funding. It may or it may not. And there will be a section that says yes or no. If yes, explain. Then this is one of the most crucial sections. Identify the other articles, sections that will be impacted by the proposed change. I said to you, read above, read below. I always say people read to the semicolon and they don't read to the period. You need to make sure you read the entire section and identify anything else. I commend the proposer of financial secretary because that included every single place in the Constitution and bylaws where financial secretary needed to be added. It needed to be added on some commissions. It needed to be added at several levels. And the person that proposed that had it at every level. That was a plus. Look at the end. The form must be signed with your name, church or conference and Episcopal district. That's not an option. It must be signed. This is not a scare tactic. We are all in this together. We just want to know who sent this in. Will you see it? Of course. No, you won't see the name of the person, but will you see your amendment? Yes. Now there are some, remember what I at the beginning, I said what the US Constitution does, it goes into a committee and everything doesn't come out of committee. We're not quite there yet for the WMS. Maybe one day we will be. But right now, what goes into the committee is shown, everybody sees all of it. And so that's where we are. And what will come in the amendment document, you will look at it. No one will know who submitted what. It's not that kind of thing. It's for us to look at the legislation that will help our organization. Next slide. Here are the cautions for submitting information. Remember all levels of the WMS. You may think something is great at one level, but it may not be so great at another. Consider all of that. I'm not suggesting that you don't still send in something, but you've got to consider everything. Then ensure that you read the entire section in a specific constitution and bylaws amendment that you want to propose. Think about it. Don't just read to the semicolon, read to the period. And if you're in a section that has more than one part, read all of it. Then always think of the financial impact with a proposed amendment. Think also about the effect that it has on every level. Always determine the issues in implementation of the proposal. Before I get to the final one, clear example, the quadrennial that was in Orlando in 2018. Dr. Young was our supervisor at that time. All of you came and we had a proposed amendment. Life members will get sustentation. I want you to know they took off the breathing machines. They woke up people. That amendment had the most votes ever of any amendment to the Constitution and bylaws. But guess what? I'm not sure if we really thought about the financial impact. It has been a crucial concern of every president since then, because we have over 1,200 life members. So to give all of those people sustentation to come to a meeting really impacts our budget. Now, please understand, my suggestion is not, I don't want to see one saying taking it away. I'm a life member, but it simply means we're not able to do what we could have done in some other area of mission. The final caution, don't forget to CIA. That's what I call it. Clarify, interpret, and apply. Think about what you want to present. Clarify it in your mind. What do you really mean? Look at how somebody else would interpret it and think about how it would apply to what we're trying to do. Okay, just for this part, are there any questions? And Dr. Young, I'm going to let you add or whatever you were thinking about for that. Could you go back to the previous one, Reverend Young? Okay.
There's, excuse me, one
Dr.
person.
Young? You can't unmute? Yeah, there you go. Oop, that was it, I think.
You muted yourself back.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, I want to emphasize what you said, Harriet, about
Okay.
working on the committee.
Yes.
I've worked on the committee. Christy has worked on the committee, and it is a lot of work. Okay, and so if you don't want to do all that work, then don't get on the committee. The other thing that I want to mention is that you talked about the readings beforehand.
Yes.
That we will be doing 2 readings before we come to the quadrennial.
Right.
When we get to the quadrennial, there will be a 3rd reading. Now, at the 3rd reading, will we do what we have done in the past? Say what the Constitution and Bylaws Committee recommends.
Yes, we will.
So I want the ladies to listen to that, because there's been a lot of work put in to looking at the amendment or whatever it is. And the Constitution and Bylaws, which includes someone from this district and all of the other districts, has said we think it should pass, we think it should not pass. And then they give a rationale for it. And so I think we should make sure that we listen to what the Constitution and Bylaws Committee says. Now, that doesn't mean you can't vote it, okay? That you can't just throw out what they said, but please listen to what they say. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, and that has to do with the rules. In the beginning of the convention, we always vote on the rules. And the rules say that if there's a discussion, that there should be so many people when a person can speak for, and then there's a person who can speak against. Now, we should not shout down people because we don't believe that. And we should come back and call on the Rules Committee to tell us if we are following our rules, because that's very important. Because I think that a lot of times we come to these conventions and think the only thing that's important is electing our leadership. And that is not the most important thing. The most important thing is our legislation. And sometimes we just gloss over it, and then we get into a position as to what our chair has talked about in terms of the life member issue. So I think that we have to be very careful. All of the things that she has talked about is done. And by the time we get to the convention, we have discussed it, we've looked at it, we've seen whether we have can pay for it and all of those things. So we don't get up with just somebody saying, oh, no, I don't want that, and say, oh, yeah, we don't want that. No, listen to your supervisor, listen to the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, and listen to the Rules Committee. That's it.
Thank you for that, Dr. Young. And what I didn't clarify is that there is a representative on the C&B committee from every district. So every district will submit a name at the end of the year. They will be ready and they'll start working. So we're not working in isolation. And so whoever is appointed your person on the Constitution and bylaws by your supervisor, you're going to have to look at that person letting you know what's happening. In the past, each committee has had, and remember, look in the Constitution for quadrennial, there are certain committees. So your supervisor will be appointing people to those committees, and those committees are the ones that will represent you. I know it's never been a time that the 6th district has not had representation. So I know you will now as well. And that's the point I didn't make clear in that part. Yes, we're going to do all of these things, but there is a representative on the Connectional Constitution and Bylaws Committee appointed by the supervisor of the 6th district, so that whatever concerns you have, those will be addressed at that time. And as Dr. Young has said, you're doing a lot of the work prior to the convention. Once you get your amendment book, you really will know what you're discussing, because you're going to look at what you presented and what some other district might have felt was important, and kind of massage that and see what you'll decide to do at convention. Thank you, Dr. Young, for that clarification. Supervisor Jackson.
I want to have the 6th Episcopal District, WMS, and YPD unmute themselves, Dr. Young, Pastor Young, and thank you with a round of applause. You did a yeoman's job in providing information that would have taken 3 days and 90 minutes. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
You are wonderful. I like that. And President Ramsey is doing the wave. That is wonderful. That's Reverend, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Supervisor, unmute yourself.
What we have gotten again is a subject matter experts presentation in what we need to do from the process standpoint. And understand the Constitution and bylaws is ours. It is not some third party Martian's interpretation of what we should be doing as an organization. This is our organization, and these are our foundational principles. And if you want to affect change, you will need to follow the process. On October the 7th, we will be hosting a WMS meeting at the mid-year meeting. October the 7th at 2 p.m. is set by our 6th Episcopal District WMS President, Dr. Sylvia Moore. She will have an agenda in coordination with her conference presidents. At that time, there will be information shared concerning dates that are relevant for the quadrennial, including these discussion process dates. At that time, on the 7th, I will be laying out what I consider most important priorities for each annual conference president, down to the local level, to be paying attention to. But again, the process will be laid out from Dr. Sylvia Moore. Rosemarie Rhodes Miller, Esquire, at the request of the supervisor and the Episcopal District WMS President, Dr. Sylvia Moore. I keep saying Dr. Moore's name because for some reason, I get queries that leapfrog over the local president, the area chair, director, the conference president, that come directly to me. They don't come even through Dr. Sylvia Moore, who is the 6th Episcopal District WMS President. And I'm asking us from a process standpoint to respect protocol, because it is important. there are some things that we can vet on the local level that don't need to rise to another level. So I'm asking us to understand that. So at the request of the supervisor, myself, and the Episcopal president, I and Dr. Moore have asked Rosemary Rhodes Miller, Esquire, to serve to vet all the applications of all the candidates for offices for the WMS and YPD. And what does that mean? It means that before an application comes to Christy Davis Jackson or Sylvia, I think Dr. Moore's middle name is Elaine, Sylvia Elaine Moore, those applications have to be reviewed by Rosemary Rhodes Miller. She's been asked to serve to vet all of our applications and furthering her responsibilities in terms of her background and experience. She's been asked by Dr. Deborah Taylor King, mine and your connectional WMS president, to serve as the credentials chair for the entire connection. So we have in our midst yet another connectional officer, in addition to Dr. Frazier, Shirley Washington, Sister Shirley Washington, former president, and Lisa Johnson Wiggum. We can add yet another talent from the 6th Episcopal District. Our credential chairwoman is Rosemary Rhodes Miller. So I want to thank everyone for their participation today at every level, all of our delegates, our connectional officers, our president, YPD president, she's not a doctor yet, but she soon will be, Joyce Stinson, Director Lorelei Johnson, our WMS president, Dr. Sylvia Moore. There's that lovely name again. I want to thank my sisters in mission. We have many supervisors and bishops who have retired to our lovely district, but I have activists, retired supervisors, and I love them. If you don't know that, then you need to ask someone. Dorothy Young is my sister in mission. I consult with her on many issues. You cannot break that connection. So go to Dr. Young and try to say something about me, and she will let you know, no, that's my sister in mission. I welcome her at every level of this conversation, as well to Dr. Dolly Adams. Lillian Roberts has served us so proudly, so well in the past on our Constitution and Bylaws Committee, and I want to personally thank her for her service. I will be making appointments. If you are interested in any level of service as part of the Constitution and Bylaws, please let someone know. We have all those different areas. We have that local level. I'm interested. We have the area level. You can say, I'm interested. You can tell your conference presidents. I see the beautiful face of President Ramsey on the screen. You can say, President Ramsey, I am so interested. But if you don't say anything and then you put in the chat later at a later time, why didn't anyone ask me? Oh boy, shame on you. This presentation is going to be made available to every delegate. Every delegate will have this presentation. We have had between 140 and 118 for people who had to go off to start their weekend. But every delegate will have access to the information. So they can't say, going into Orlando, why is this or that? It won't be the case for the 6th Episcopal District. We are going to be of one accord. It's going to be wonderful. So thank you again, Dr. Burke. You are fabulous. You should know that unfortunately, I won't be serving again. I will be sitting with the delegate the entire time, but I have made a recommendation to Dr. Deborah Taylor King. I believe that there are some young women who can serve just as ably as I did in the past, and I needed to make way for that to happen. Everyone have a blessed day. Pat Phillips, will you pray us out of this wonderful meeting?
Supervisor,
Yes,
I have one more slide.
Oh,
that
I'm
has my,
sorry.
that's okay. That has my contact information. And I
Okay.
just have one closing statement, if I can do that before we end.
Absolutely. And after your voice will be Pat Phillips. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you.
Madam,
Thank you.
excuse me, Supervisor and Ms.
Yes,
Burke,
ma'am.
may I just say something real quick? Thank you, Ms. Burke. We enjoyed everything. And I just wanted to remind everybody that the YPD mid-year meeting will be virtual, and it will be Saturday, October the 8th. So please make sure that all the churches are registered. The church can register all the youth for just a low price. So we expect to see everybody, because we're going to continue the learning and teach all about the YPD officers. And thank you again, Ms. Burke, because this was very informal. This was very informative. It was very informative. Have a great day.
Thank you. And Reverend John, could you show my last slide?
Dr. Burke, it will be included when we share out the presentation. I don't want to share it because we're live on Facebook and YouTube, and it has your address on there. So
all of that is fine. I'm an attorney. I'm getting clients. That's not an issue.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay, here we go. That's perfectly fine. I'm already out with everything anyway. Just wanted to say I enjoyed this morning. Thank you for all of you who took the time, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you the name of my graphic artist. Andrea Lowry is the area YPD director for the Margaret Ward area of the Central Conference, and she's a member of St. Paul Apopka. I wanted you to know my personal byline is this: Micah 68, to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. I try to do that in everything I do. And I'm glad it was not a slip, Ms. Johnson, Lorelei, to say that this was informal. It was, because we're so serious with a lot of things we do. I wanted to make sure that I gave you information and provided it in a manner that you would feel that you could participate. That's what we have to do. We can't be afraid. We have to be bold as missionaries as we continue with our mission. That's our primary goal. We are learning, but we are missionaries and we're doing mission work. Thank you for the invitation, Supervisor Jackson. I was with you in 2018, and here I am again. We are post-pandemic, and we are praying when you come to Orlando that this monster will be over and we can really entertain you. God bless you all.
Sister Phillips. President Moore.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you pray us out, please?
I can. Let us bow our heads. Father God, we thank you so much for this morning. We thank you for all the knowledge and wisdom that you have shared upon us. Lord, we thank you for Attorney Harris, for she has taken the time out of her day to share with us. We thank you for our past and present supervisors who have shared the knowledge and wisdom with us also. We ask that each of us take what we have learned today and use it for the best of our abilities, not to belittle or tell someone different that they might or might not be doing something right or wrong, but to teach and understand what we have learned today. Father God, we ask that everything that has been said today is for the good of your kingdom. In this we pray, amen.
Amen. God bless everyone.
And
God
hi,
bless.
Lillian. I forgot to say hello to Lillian Roberts and all your wonderful work as well. Thank you, everybody. Love you all.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed day, everyone.
You too.